And lest I should be exalted above measure, through the abundance of the revelations, there was given to me a thorn in the flesh, the messenger of Satan to buffet me, lest I should be exalted above measure. For this thing I besought the Lord thrice, that he may depart from me. And he said unto me, My grace is sufficient for thee, for my strength is made perfect in weakness. Most gladly, therefore, will I rather glory in my infirmities, that the power of Christ may rest upon me. Therefore I take pleasure in infirmities, in reproaches, in necessities, in persecutions, in distresses for Christ's sake. For when I am weak, then I am strong. This is 2 Corinthians chapter 12, verses 7 to 10. I've heard very many people talk about this. Even Neville did a lecture on this specific thing, and he really couldn't tell us what Paul was suffering. He really couldn't tell us why Paul asked God 3 times to remove something from him. However, we do see here 2 things in this verse here. One was a preventative measure in place by Paul to prevent himself from boasting about all the revelations, metaphysical and mystical experiences that he was having, because he was trying to convert people through telling them that Jesus Christ is not a historical figure. Jesus Christ is within each and every one of us, right? And he set this up for himself so that he doesn't become egotistical and doesn't let the ego take over. The other thing to notice here too is a messenger of Satan. Satan was always referred to as the force in the world and the opposition against anyone who had a spiritual awakening, who was walking the spiritual road, and their sharing of their experience was not welcomed in the world. Satan is also a reference to the church at the times and could be applied very much to some of the churches in our times today. And Satan was always this thing that was the belief system in the world. And if you oppose that belief system, you get buffeted, kind of as it says here, which when I looked up the word buffet, it implied either buffet, like a large buffet, feast for all kind of thing, or it implied being boxing and being punched in the face over and over and over again. I believe Paul got a serious beating here because he speaks about his revelations, and he got a beating to tell him to stop talking about this stuff here. Now, the other thing also here, as I said, Neville did a lecture on this, and a few other people have talked about this verse and whatnot, and all of them don't seem to get the picture here that the world beat Paul up. Someone from an organization, a worldly belief system organization, literally beat the living daylights out of him. The other thing is that, a lot of these people want to insert their own editing process and narrative and whatnot and oversee certain things written of here and said here. Because many commentaries on this verse say, we don't know what's up with Paul. We don't know, did Paul have an incident? Was it when he was on the island and the viper bit him? Neville suggested that he had some sort of speech impediment and he wasn't prepared to speak on the things that he spoke of. I believe Neville saw this. I really do, because of all the experiences that Neville had. But Neville never really dealt with Satan. He always told people to leave Satan alone. That's just the world. That's just the opposition you're facing. That is nothing more than a reflection or aspect of yourself. And you can overcome that by just believing that you are greater than that. So Neville never spent much time talking about Satan. He brought it up every once and again and he laughed at it. He said it's doubt, it's fear, stuff like that. And that's exactly what it is. But in this verse here, we see that Paul got a severe beating for speaking on his revelations. And Paul took it upon himself to kind of say that he doesn't want to boast about his revelations. He doesn't want to become egoic with them. And you shouldn't. You should try and speak to people when it's time to speak about them. And if you're not accepted for them, then that's fine. Move on. He was always a thorn in everyone's side, talking about his road to Damascus experience. And then in chapter 12 of 2 Corinthians, he talks about a third heaven. These are the two awakenings that Paul had. This is your testimony. Paul is a state. It is not a human being. This is your testimony, your first spiritual awakening. No one is going to hear you. No one is going to listen to you. And the second one is so profound and so disturbing and yet so glorious at the same time that you will want to talk about it always. But don't forget, you may not be of the world, but you're still in the world. And the world has its own belief system and has the ego. And the ego always follows you around. The ego always hears what you do and what you think and what you say, and projects and manifests many things, either good, bad, or indifferent for you, and all just to kind of get you away from this mindset of being greater than what you truly are. And Paul was very afraid of this, that the ego might lead him to mislead others by considering himself to be greater than others. So he feels that he was, in a way, punished for this also. But I think the obvious thing here to see is that Paul was severely beaten up by an organization that he calls a messenger of Satan. No different than some sort of, 1940s espionage movie where, the Gestapo and whatnot, you know what I mean? So I guess that was the church of the times. And like I said, a lot of those times haven't gone away. They're still with us in the world, in the church system. And I guess you could say that the in an espionage kind of way, that the church is the Gestapo and sent their messenger out there to plummet and give Paul a severe beating. Paul also makes mention of this, like later on when he's apologizing to everyone in verse chapter in 2 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 13. For what is it wherein you were inferior to other churches? Even showing you here, the churches in that day and age were holding people hostages, making people feel that they needed to subject themselves to an organization, making them feel like they are worthless, like they are nothing, making them feel that they don't, without the church, their lives are going to be total hell. And not only that, God has two sections of eternity for good people and evil people. And if you do not subject to our laws and our belief system, well, you're going to be, sent down to that place. That place. Anyways, I thought I would point this out, but that's not what I wanted to talk about here. What I wanted to talk about here, this verse here that says, my grace is sufficient unto you, for my power. I'm going by the old Bibles. I love the old Bibles because there wasn't much tampering. Here they use the word strength. My strength is made perfect in weakness. In old Bibles, where there was not so much tampering, it used to be my power is made perfect in weakness. And I believe in some of our Bibles, you can still find the word power. I like the word power because, you know what? I can visualize power. I can see power. Strength reminds me of, like, not everyone is equal in strength, even through exercise and muscles and whatnot, or in their daily routines and their lives. There's weaknesses, right? But power seems to just, the word power seems to imply that we all have power. We all have this power. And that power works brilliantly, marvelously in our weakest, darkest moments. My grace is sufficient unto you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. This is a mystery also, because it is for your spiritual awakening. It is for when you are going through your awakening. And you may think that awakening is, yeah, I made it. Yeah. I feel glorious. I feel wonderful. I feel powerful. And you couldn't be further from the truth. And yet at the same time, the grand paradox is you're absolutely right. You are absolutely right. You do feel great. It is wonderful. It is great. It is something new. It is something supernatural and metaphysical and very much out of this world, otherworldly. However, once that phase of your understanding of spiritual awakening subsides, it never leaves you, but it does lay out to the side, because now you have to be educated on spirituality. And I've said this in so many other videos before, spirituality is not for the faint of heart. Amos says, "Why seek ye the day of the Lord? The day of the Lord is darkness." Okay, I may be paraphrasing here, right? But he says, the day of the Lord is like a man who went to the market and encountered a lion and escaped from the lion only to be ripped to shreds by a bear. That is true spirituality. And this warning in Amos is for people who seek it too soon. Let it come to you. You have an appointed time for when this will happen to you. If you go looking for it and you try to discover it any other way, it quite literally will destroy you, and it won't allow you to have the natural shift and change into the spiritual person that you truly are. Now, you are spiritual through and through. You don't need any of this to help you or to tell you that you are spiritual. You don't. However, you won't see it on your own. You belong to a world that you have allowed yourself to experience, and to experience every facet of the world, good, bad, indifferent, and otherwise. You are part of a belief system that started with your parental figures, moved on to your educational figures, moved on to your social figures, and then moved on into your employment and financial figures to help you become the person that you are. If you go looking for something, as Amos says here, you might be disappointed before your time to discover what you discover. And it may not benefit you, but hurt you more than it should actually benefit you when your time comes to recognize this and see this. So this verse in 2 Corinthians is very important for the spiritual walk, because spirituality is definitely a very hard road. It is a very, very difficult road. But every obstacle you break down builds you up. You know that expression, expansion and contraction, expansion and contraction? That's exactly what you're dealing with. And you will lose many battles in your spiritual awakening. Many, many battles. And that is why you have to remember this verse. My grace is sufficient unto you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Or my strength, if you guys want to hear strength. My strength is made perfect in weakness. However, I hate strength. I choose power over strength. And every obstacle that you come against, and you raise your hands up in the air and you say, "Why have you forsaken me? Why did you give me this wonderful gift? And now all of a sudden you've hung me out to dry." You know what I mean? Those are the moments you have to remember and be patient and understand that you have faith. Faith is part of a belief system, but it's not a worldly belief system. You have to identify with the belief system that is you, not the world, you. And that requires faith. And faith is your greatest tool in your little arsenal of tools when it comes to growing spiritually and maturing spiritually. In those moments, this verse is that. Now, as I said, in this verse, Paul is showing us a couple of things, right? Paul is showing us that he was beaten severely by an organization that didn't like hearing about his spiritual awakening. And they didn't like the people being led astray by someone talking about an internal Jesus Christ, a resemblance and identification to Jesus Christ and God. So they gave him a severe beating. The other thing is, he mentions it was for his revelations. And so he feels that he got this beating because he may have been led to boasting, or he may have led some people astray thinking that he was greater than they are. And so to prevent himself from boasting, he feels that he may have suffered something. All the other commentaries, I feel you're not going to get this. They're not going to show you this, especially the commentaries coming from the church. They're not going to tell you that we are responsible for beating Paul up, because our church system does not accept an internal Jesus Christ. It lives and breathes on a historical Jesus Christ, on an outside Jesus Christ, on a God in a heaven with a list in his hand, and a hell that he has created for people who are not good. A lot of those commentaries will not see this, and they will lead people astray by not reading what has been written, what the narrative says. And the narrative is exactly that. He got beat up by an organization very badly for speaking on his revelations, his mystical experiences, the metaphysical properties of himself that were coming together spiritually. And he united with God, had union with God, recognized God, and tried to share it with everyone else. And then, as he said to himself, as he says in the verse about himself, for fear of boasting and whatnot, he felt that this was deserved, but he didn't understand it, and he asked 3 times to have this removed from him, so that he would be able to speak on this. And then, nevertheless, he settled in comfortably, being aware that he has the power in these weak moments to be great and stronger and rise above any challenge, any beating, any self-doubt or self-sabotage, by making others feel that he is superior and they are inferior to him. But he does mention later on, as I said, that, a lot of people were subject to that church, as they are today too, subject to giving their power over to a church, and the church made them feel inferior, and that's how certain systems work. I'm not just pointing out the church here, but certain systems work like that. They can only keep you engaged by making you think you are something. All the while, they think of you as being nothing, less than nothing. And they are just feeding off of your power to help them move and grow. This verse is very important in 2 Corinthians, because this is your greatest spiritual tool. And this will show you if you have the faith. And you will have the faith. No one will fail. There is no failure here. You will have the faith. But I will tell you that you will lose many, many battles before you come to a point of acceptance of the things that happen to you and who you are. And you will feel hurt, and you will face many emotional tides, ups and downs, ebbs and flows in the world. And as you're changing and as you're accepting your true spiritual nature, and you will feel conflict, and you will feel distracted, and the emotions of hurt and pain and suffering and grief and mourning. But always in those stages, always remember you are a spiritual being. And especially when you go through this in your spiritual awakening, that this verse is very important. These people like Luke, who gave us Paul in the book of Acts, and allowed Paul a voice to share his experience, are the states that we walk through. And these are experiences left behind for us to recognize. These authors were speaking about the transformation and change, the metaphysical shift that was happening to them, the identification and union with God. They were not writing history. What they are writing is all allegorical. It's parables, and there's truth in a parable. But you have to find the truth, and you will find it when you're spiritual. It'll awaken in you. Jesus Christ will awaken in you and reveal to you that the meaning of this, that, and the other. And you will see it, that it is not a historical book. Has nothing to do with historicity. How can you have a historicity if you're spiritual? You're spiritual, and you always are. You always is. There is no two ways about it. You always are. Nothing can hurt you. Nothing can kill you. Life, there is no death in life. There is, in the meaning of life, in the word life, that just means forever and ever and ever and ever and ever. There's no death in it. And you are life. You are light. You are God. Jesus Christ awakens in you, identifies as you, and you identify as Jesus Christ. And then everything that the experiences of the authors written in the book that we call the Bible start unfolding in you, and you start experiencing them in a first-person perspective. I always considered the Bible to be a third-person perspective of a first-person experience. That's what I should have said. You will experience it in a first-person experience of what's unfolding in you. And you will try and talk about this stuff. And you will face great hurt and great persecution talking about it. You will lose your family, probably. You will lose your friends. You will lose your job. You will look around and wonder what is happening to you. What happened to that? Hallelujah, I made it. Yeah, I'm here. Spiritual, you know? And then all of a sudden you're going to wonder, where did it go? Where did it go? And you did not understand that God must break you down first. You must be broken down like a clay jar. And then you must be reformed again into an everlasting, all-powerful, spiritual, life-giving spirit, creative power that you truly are. Now, that doesn't mean that you're going to turn into some comic book superhero, Spider-Man, Superman, you know what I mean, Wolverine or something like that. It just means that you're going to recognize there's a power in you that has always been in you, that has been greater than the you that is in the world. And this power will start shaping you and changing you and transforming you, and you will become greater and greater and greater and fight off everything that you can, knowing that the battles that you can't win, my grace is sufficient unto you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. And in those battles that you can't win and you feel weak is when you are the most powerful. And it comes down to being patient, having faith, and knowing that this too shall pass. So this verse is very important. We don't know who Paul is. I don't know who Paul is. I've had many experiences that are written in the letters of Paul, many dream experiences, many revelations, as Paul says, even his third heaven revelation. And I was always me, but I was playing Paul, first-person experience, third-person perspective from the book of a first-person experience, me experiencing everything unfolding in me. So I can't say that Paul is a real person. I believe Paul is a state of consciousness. I also know, looking at it, that the book and the book of Acts, that were it not for Luke, we would not have Paul. And if Paul is speaking about his revelation of Jesus Christ and having union with God on his road to Damascus, and Paul, let's assume, and Luke are real people, then Paul was taught by Luke about Jesus Christ, whereas Paul once upon a time didn't accept this, rebelled against it, fought it, and killed and persecuted everyone that was following this teaching. He now, through someone having explained it to him, Luke, understood it. And then Luke gave us the character of Paul. And he allowed Paul to have a voice and to carry on. But in my opinion, Luke, Matthew, Mark, John, Isaiah, Ezekiel, Jonah, everyone else, David, these are all states of consciousness that you go through. And the greatest state of consciousness to recognize in the Christ is David. Because I believe that Christ movement that awakening of Jesus Christ in you didn't happen 2,000 years ago, but was secret. And it happened, let's say, maybe 4,000 or 6,000 years ago, but it was a big mystery. That is what the Old Testament is. It is the concealing of what is actually taking place, the spiritual change and the spiritual awakening. And the New Testament is the unfolding and the revealing of what you go through in your spiritual awakening and what you truly are and who you truly are in your spiritual awakening. And there's no gender complication here. God is a spirit, male and female. So Jesus Christ is male and female. They may be masculine terms and whatnot, but there is no gender identification. It is neutral because God is both male and female. And that's what you are spiritually. Your spirit is male and female. And you have to embrace your masculine side and you have to embrace your feminine side. And these are all the struggles and these are all the walks and these are all the transforming powers of you becoming spiritual. And you always have to remember when you come up against a brick wall, my grace is sufficient unto you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Stick with power, not strength. Sick and tired of constantly modifying the Bible to read something that it's not. If we got one translation like back in the 1500s or the 1600s or whatever, we got one translation. Leave it alone. Don't tamper with it so we can all agree or at least see similarly. So stupid, tampering with something that you never understand and you'll never figure out until you're ready, until your appointed time. Anyways, this is Nick. This is Tea Talk. Thanks for joining me. Remember, my grace is sufficient unto you, for my power is made perfect in weakness.